Which ancient civilization is still wealthy, influential, and powerful today? Mesopotamian Middle East? No. Egypt? No. Greece? Rome? No. Central America? No. Africa? Africa? Most people don't even know that the Dark Continent was so famed throughout much of the ancient world for its sophisticated cultures and incredible riches that, really, it should have been dubbed the continent of wealth. For example, who is, or was, the richest man in history? One man whose fortune was worth at least 400 billion. His name? Mansa Musa, who was the 10th Mansa or emperor of the Mali Empire in West Africa, which flourished between the 13th and 16th centuries AD. The empire was founded by Sundiata Keita, otherwise known as the Lion King. But Mansa Musa, who lived from 1280 to 1337, took the empire to new heights of power, wealth, and influence. Musa made Timbuktu the capital, the center of education and culture for the whole of Africa. Unfortunately, the empire fell in 1593, following invasions from nearby Morocco, mocked in Ghana during the 9th century AD, one of the most powerful empires of ancient Africa. Its power was based on its vast gold mines. It was so rich that even the dogs had gold collars. It traded principally with Europe, which exchanged cloth, horses, and books for gold and ivory. As a trading partner, it was so attractive that Arab traders would struggle for months through the jungles to reach the kingdom. But in 1240, the empire collapsed, defeated by the growing Mali Empire. A pattern seems to be forming here. Does excessive wealth attract envy and potential invasion? Indeed, that appears to have been the fate of the Benin Kingdom in modern-day Nigeria. In the 11th century, the Edo tribe began cutting down trees in the rainforests of West Africa. 400 years later, it had expanded into a thriving city-state. Their rulers were called the Oba. As in Rome, the later Oba became involved in many power-related family feuds and intrigues. Indeed, the name Benin comes from the kingdom's original name, Ibinu, which means land of anger. The Benin people were highly skilled in brass work, for statues, artwork, and plaques that depicted battle scenes in gory detail. Eventually, trade with Europe vastly increased the kingdom's wealth. From Benin, the Europeans bought coral beads, leopard skins, and pepper, all of which commanded huge prices back home. But the people of Benin didn't realize that advertising their wealth might not be such a good idea. And so, in 1897, Great Britain sent in its army and navies, destroyed all trace of Benin's culture, took anything of value, and simply added the land and its rich natural resources to its own growing empire. Another example from ancient Africa of it's safer not to flush the cash was Carthage, founded in 1814 BC by Dido, daughter of the king of Tyre and famed for her beauty. Earlier, following the murder of her husband, she'd fled Tyre, sailed to the coast of North Africa, and established the city-state of Carthage in modern-day Tunisia. It became extremely wealthy, as its people were exceptionally skilled in furniture crafting that was in great demand throughout the ancient world. Under Dido, the city-state wrote a sophisticated constitution, ensuring human rights for every one of its citizens. Unfortunately, Carthage became so prosperous that it attracted the attention and envy of Labas, the king of Mauritania. He told Dido's envoys that she should be given a choice, either marry him or he would destroy the city. At first, her envoys just mentioned that Labas intended invading Carthage, and Dido declared that anyone who would not give their lives to defend Carthage was a traitor. They then mentioned the marriage, and Dido realized that she was trapped by her own words. She had no choice. She had to marry him. But she did have a choice. She built a huge funeral pyre, which she claimed was in memory of her murdered husband, and, as it burnt, threw herself upon it and fell upon her sword. Eventually, Carthage was plundered and burned during the expansion of the Roman Empire. And during the expansion of the British Empire, one very wealthy civilization that very nearly drove away its envious attackers was the Kingdom of Zulu on the coast of Southeast Africa. Its warriors were the most feared in the history of the continent. In 1818, the kingdom was established by Shaka Zulu after avoiding several bloody family feuds and murder attempts. The Zulu Empire rose in riches and fame thanks to Shaka's groundbreaking military tactics. He introduced the Icklewe spear and created the incredibly effective buffalo horns formation. The two horns, or right and left flanks, encircled and pinned the enemy. The head between the horns would attack, and the loins or reserves behind the head would offer support. Their fearless and highly effective fighting techniques initially defeated the British in 1879, but their success didn't last long. Eventually they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. In the Battle of Ulundi later that year, they were defeated. Apart from envious invasion, one of the most common reasons why an empire declines and falls is that it gets too big to manage. And this is exactly what happened to the Songhai Empire, that became one of the world's greatest empires during the 15th and 16th centuries. It spanned thousands of miles over Western Africa. As with many other African empires, its wealth came from trade. A centralized government bureaucracy aggressively oversaw several thousand cultures, and nearly 250,000 troops kept everything under control. But its size became its downfall. The army broke into factions and civil war broke out. And by the late 1500s, this once mighty empire had disintegrated into small, squabbling kingdoms. And this was also the fate of a remarkable ancient African civilization that, today, virtually no one has heard of. It's called the Kingdom of Kush, located in present-day Sudan on the Nile Valley. Its rulers, after having invaded Egypt in the 8th century BC, actually declared themselves pharaohs and continued the dynasty. However, unlike the ancient Egyptians, Kush had mastered the use of iron, which they traded with the Romans, in addition to slaves, ivory, and gold. Women were very important to this civilization. Queens often succeeded kings. Indeed, one of the largest pyramids in Kush was built to honor a female pharaoh. Their artwork was sophisticated and often depicted archers who were both venerated and feared. But by the 6th century AD, the Kingdom of Kush was dissolved. Roman invasions in the 1st and 2nd centuries had weakened it. Internal power squabbles further destabilized it, and Christianity had replaced the old ways of the pharaohic religion. Invasions, power squabbles, too big to manage. These are common themes in why empires collapse. But sometimes, ancient civilizations just seem to have disappeared without trace and without explanation. And one such nation is known as the Land of the Gods. No one knows quite where it was. The best guess is that it bordered present-day Egypt, and through proximity and natural resources was the source of much of the pharaoh's gold. It's commonly known as Punt. Its people had dark red complexions and long straight hair. They lived in reed huts, perched on stilts over water near lush green lands. Egyptian pharaohs exchanged trees, incense, ivory, and pygmies for gold, frankincense, myrrh, ebony, and short-horned cattle. They sailed to Punt in small sailing boats, traveling down the Nile or through the Red Sea. Perilous journeys in those days. It's thought that the Puntites had a huge influence on Egyptian culture, its art, sculpture, writing, and religion. But by the end of the Egyptian New Kingdom period, around 1150 BC, Punt had all but vanished into legend, remembered only in songs and poetry. Another legend, the famed Ark of the Covenant, is also associated with a culture that enigmatically disappeared. The location of the mysterious Ark of the Covenant, the gold-covered wooden chest containing the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments, is allegedly in Ethiopia, Africa. From 100 AD to 940 AD, the Axum Empire in present-day Ethiopia dominated northeastern Africa. It had a massive naval presence that traded as far away as India and Rome. One Persian writer described Axum as one of the 4 greatest powers in the world. It had throngs of foreign visitors from Europe, Asia, and other kingdoms of Africa, and created geese, Africa's original written script. In several of the rescued documents, it describes not only that the Ark is buried there, but also that it was the home of the Queen of Sheba. Apart from that, virtually nothing is known about this powerful empire. It fell almost without a trace. But the weirdest instance of a disappearing civilization is probably the Nok culture that existed in modern-day Nigeria from about 900 BC until 200 AD. Weird, as in an obsession with ugliness. Their terracotta life-size sculptures are noted for gross distortions of body parts, and in particular the head. They almost look like our representations of extraterrestrials, with elongated faces and exaggerated features. Some speculate that they represent diseases like elephantitis, STDs, and were used to ward off such conditions, but no one is 100% sure. It was a highly sophisticated culture. They had a complex judicial system with different classes of courts to deal with murder, adultery, theft, and family disputes. And they were highly advanced in metallurgy, forging beautiful spear points, bracelets, and knives. In 200 AD, the Nok population declined mysteriously. Theories such as climate change and famine have been put forward, but no one actually knows why such a stable society simply disappeared.
Don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button.